All right, everyone, welcome in on a Thursday night to Ohio State Buckeyes Live, our 30th edition here at Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. Of course, post National Signing Day and what has become the National Signing Day in place of what we once became accustomed to each and every year, that first Wednesday of February. On the line with Tony Gerdeman from the Ozone. We got Kevin Noon from Rivals, Buckeye Grove, and of course, senior Big Ten writer from 247 Sports, Bucknuts, Steve Hellwagon. How you guys doing tonight?
Great.
Doing well.
Good. The recruiting class, I guess, hit standards. Some people won't be satisfied with just anything. It was only number 3 in the country, but I think the haul was decent. Steve, we'll start with you in regards to what stands out on National Signing Day here.
Yeah, I think you got to be excited from the Ohio State standpoint that they keep the ball rolling on the offensive side of the ball. Obviously, getting 2 quarterbacks, which in and of itself is interesting. How do you keep 2 quarterbacks happy? But the race to replace Justin Fields has begun. When you talk about adding C.J. Stroud, an outstanding quarterback out of Rancho Cucamonga, California, and also Jack Miller, who was kind of an early bloomer. He really put up some big numbers early in his career, was kind of banged up the last couple of years from Chaparral High School. I think that is in Scottsdale, Arizona, which is where we will be within just another few short days. Some of us getting there a little earlier than others on this call, but very much looking forward to my, what will this be, 8th trip to the Valley of the Sun to cover Ohio State in a bowl game. And I know we're going to talk about this ad infinitum, but the joke I always put out is I'm waiting on the Arizona Department of Taxation to start sending me, a query for how much I owe them in state income tax, because now I've spent about 2 months of my life there. But at any rate, recruiting outstanding, 2 quarterbacks, 4 of the top 15 wide receivers in the country, and 6 very good offensive linemen, including one of the absolute best in Paris Johnson from Cincinnati Princeton. So a lot of star power on offense. They filled a lot of their needs on defense. Maybe didn't get that edge rusher that everybody, the next Chase Young, like those guys grow on trees. Got 3 guys at linebacker who can all run and play in this new era of spread football, college football. And then the secondary hurt a little bit because Clark Phillips III from La Habra, California, hopefully I said that right, he did not sign yesterday. Made a visit to Utah over this past weekend and ended up now he's going to be a running Ute, as it were. And, as we were joking yesterday, I think I was joking with Bill Connolly. Maybe I saw him, one of the former Ohio State assistants. I go, I want to see all the national championships they've played for. But, enjoy your time there in Provo or Salt Lake or whatever they serve out there. So, yeah, I don't know. That kind of encapsulates my view of the whole thing. Bang up job, and we can talk more about Ryan Day and his staff. But rookie head coach, number 3 class in the country, doesn't get a whole lot better than that.
Tony, what stands out to you?
The receivers, really. I mean, you look at the class, and that's the main thing, the big thing, where you get 4 guys who each of the receivers would be the jewel of a receiver class for a school, and they've got guys who are. I mean, you look at Jackson Smith and Jigba has 3,900 yards receiving the past 2 years in Texas, 55 touchdowns, 200 catches, and that's maybe the second or third most impressive or highest ranked guy. And you start with Julian Fleming, the number 1 ranked recruit, I think, in ESPN's entire ranking system. And then you've got G. Scott, another big guy out in Washington. And then as Brian Hartline called him, or Ryan Day, the little guy, Mookie Cooper in the slot. Those 4 guys, Ohio State is losing 3, probably 4 receivers if C.J. Saunders does not come back, So they're losing some guys, and they need to replace them. And I don't know that you replace them all that well with 2 freshmen, but we've seen Chris Olave last year and Garrett Wilson this year. So if they could get 2 guys to do that next year, that would be a big help because you're losing Ben Victor and Austin Mack and KJ Hill. So there's going to be opportunities. So I think for me, the receivers stand out. I also, the bottom half of the class might dictate how good this class actually is, because it's the top of it is really, really good. But then some of the lower ranked guys, some of the offensive linemen, maybe Mitchell Melton, a linebacker, some of those guys that were pretty early, commits in terms of the time frame. So Ohio State obviously liked them, but let's see how they do. Let's see how if they exceed their recruiting rankings, and if they do, then this class will be should be pretty special.
Kevin, you get the scraps only because I know you can handle it.
Yeah. When you look at any recruiting class, I mean, you could have a class of 25 and they're all 5 stars ranked 1 from 25, and recruiting fans will be upset that they're ranked in the wrong order. So, with that being said, it is a really good class from top to bottom. 24 already in the fold. They're going to wait on Cameron Martinez, the athlete out of Muskegon, Michigan. He's supposed to sign in February. Northwestern's coming on strong for him. A heck of a receiver, offensive player. A lot of schools looking at him on that side. Ohio State's so deep at receiver, they're looking at him on defense. Certainly going to be the need for more in the defensive backfield with the loss of Clark Phillips. But I think this class really does check off a lot of the boxes when you look at it. I don't think anybody's really kind of talking about the linebacker position. I think the combo of Mitchell Melton and Cody Simon, I think those are 2 players, while they are, 4-star type of players, probably not getting the mention when you sit there and you look at the 2 quarterbacks and the 4 receivers and everything else. And I think a player that everybody's kind of sleeping on too is going to be the running back Mayan Williams out of Cincinnati, the former Iowa State commit. Ohio State certainly wanted to bring in 2 running backs in this class. It looked like they were going to be fine with Bijan Robinson, who ended up in Texas, and Jalen Knighton, who was committed to Florida State. I believe he ended up at Miami. I didn't follow that through to see if he actually signed there or not. If you're a Miami commit, there's a 50-50 chance whether or not you sign with them or somebody else, just kind of how their recruiting works out. But Ohio State now will really be able to kind of drill down and focus on maybe 1 or 2 more spots potentially in this remainder of the class. It's going to go 6 more weeks until we get to the traditional signing day. Looking maybe at another running back, definitely trying to get Cameron Martinez. There's not a lot of targets out there, but Ohio State certainly will, do as much as they can with a very short schedule as they prepare for the Fiesta Bowl on the 28th. And then if everything goes according to the plan of Buckeye Nation, preparing for another game a couple weeks after that.
I apologize if I missed out on this comment by anyone, but I'm top to bottom in regards to the star ranking. So I see 8 from Ohio. Those are the letters of intent that have been signed, correct? And they're all Ohio kids?
8 of them.
A lot from Cincinnati.
6 of them. Yeah, 6 from Cincinnati.
This seems to be a bit of a departure from Urban Meyer's approach.
The state of Ohio is really deep this year. I think when you sit there and you have the number 1 offensive tackle in the nation and Paris Johnson Jr., and you just kind of build down from there, and you've got some talented guys that they're able to bring in at that point. Ty Hamilton may be a little bit underrated out of Pickerington, Ohio. His big brother, Devon Hamilton, Darion Henry, who also is out of the same school as Paris Johnson, tight end Joe Royer out of Cincinnati, kicker Jake Seibert, and then a couple more offensive linemen when you look at Jacob James and Trey LaRue.
Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football, with our Ohio State Buckeyes live show that we bring you each and every week, this time on a Thursday night at 7 o'clock Eastern time. So keep abreast of those notifications as we let you know each and every week when we're coming your way. Of course, 2 big topics: National Signing Day. The Buckeyes bring in another typical haul. Urban Meyer, Ryan Day era, top 3 in the nation, number 1 in the Big Ten by far. And, of course, they're playing a football game next Saturday night. We're coming up on this one. So when are you guys heading out, and who is Steve all over on of not getting in the air and getting out there to Arizona soon enough?
Steve.
Oh, it's going to be you. Okay.
I have 3 kids, even though 2 of them are in their 3rd year of college. And if I tried to miss Christmas, they'd probably disown me. And in fact, I'm sure they're trying to disown me as we speak for some different things that have already occurred. Let's just say that when they've been gone for a semester and then they come back here, everybody gets on everybody's nerves. And it hasn't been very smooth here for the last week or so since they got back. But by next week with Christmas, everything should be good. But I'm flying out at 4 o'clock on Christmas Day. We'll arrive in Arizona around 9 p.m. out there, and we'll join these fellows at the resort, the beautiful Camelback Inn there in North Scottsdale, probably by 10 or 10:30, and we're debating whether the Fiesta Bowl, which is known throughout the land for their amazing hospitality, whether they're going to be open for business, as it were, on Christmas Eve or Christmas night for these ink-stained wretches who will be there, these scribes that are some of them are going to be there from the 23rd or the 22nd when the team arrives on. So I'll let those guys share when they're coming. And when I'm done, I'm actually going with the family. We're going to make a quick trip up to Grand Canyon and then back to Vegas is where they're flying into, and going to fly back out of Vegas on a red-eye flight back to Cincinnati, as it were, to visit family down there. And my wife and 3 kids are all going to the game, which is a little bit of a Christmas present for all of them.
You guys will probably have to explain the term scribes, and probably do to a number of people that now work in the industry.
And ink. I mean, unless you're printing something. I mean, I haven't encountered ink in a long time in this
Kevin,
industry.
I was dealing with our buddy Livingston today, who was definitely an ink-stained wretch. He was an old columnist at the Plain Dealer, and he had plenty of ink all over his hands in his time. So I'm just kind of looking at that glory period of when we were all doing this before the internet age.
So
well,
folks
I was going to say, Gerd and I are on the same flight on the 22nd. We leave bright and early, and we'll be out there in time for the team arrival out at the airport. The mariachi band, the creepy Fiesta Bowl sun mascot they've got out there, and we'll kick the doors down over at the JW to make sure the media room is open and that everything meets the high standards that they set year in and year out with their fantastic hospitality staff.
We'll break it in.
Oh, I'm sure you guys will. The super chat's on, folks. So contribute to the channel a number of ways. This is just one option. The super chat is on, and we bring you Ohio State Buckeyes talk with the very best each and every week. Steve Hellwagon, Kevin Noon, and Tony Gerdeman tonight. You guys know then if you guys have certain things to talk about, we've got the playoff game and obviously recruiting and anything. And in the live chat, certainly if you leave your comments and questions, I will pass them along to them. And every so often I've got something to say as well. But, you know, and the awful questions that I throw out there, you guys know better. You guys can just overrun them and talk about whatever you need to that's interesting regarding these two topics with Ohio State football. But I do think that you guys have just about the best insight. And I bring up the Ohio factor, but any differences that you can find, because the numbers don't point to any differences between Ryan Day's approach and Urban Meyer's approach, Kevin?
You know, I don't know. I mean, I would say one of the things that I've noticed is that I don't think that Ryan Day has the team on pins and needles as much as the way that Urban did. Urban wanted an angry team, and Urban certainly was a pretty demanding taskmaster. And that's not saying that Ryan Day is lackadaisical or not focused or anything like that. But, you know, I've heard through whispers and whatnot that the team's had a lot of fun this year, and that maybe under Urban sometimes there were a lot of people on edge. So, you know, we'll see how that goes here. I mean, the team is on a short break right now. Players have been allowed to go home and see family and whatnot. They'll reconvene on the 22nd to either fly out of Columbus, or for those west of the Rockies and out in that part of the country, they can just head straight down to Sky Harbor Airport at that point. But, you know, I think one of the big differences is just maybe that approach. But, you know, when rubber meets the road, Ryan is going to knuckle down on them, and they're going to be ready.
I always figured that Meyer guy was doing things wrong. So that must have been it.
Yeah, they finally got somebody in charge who knows what he's doing. One of
About time.
the interesting things with the Ohioans, they've got a couple of like low 3-star offensive linemen, which I think is maybe a good idea because in the past Urban would go all over the country, and Ryan Day will too, for offensive linemen, but sometimes they reach on or they sign offensive linemen from out west or wherever, and then they get homesick and leave after a year. Here, if you've got some guys who aren't playing, they aren't as likely to get homesick, or if they do, they're an hour away from home. So this allows you, like Jacob James and Trey LaRue, who the two Ohioans I'm talking about, allows you to develop them, and they should be okay just, getting developed and not playing for the first couple of years. And then that allows you to have depth and doesn't allow you to keep chasing spots that you don't have. And so having those Ohioans, I think they should be doing that at quarterback too. Sign an Ohio quarterback every 2 years. That way that guy is less likely to leave in the transfer portal without at least spending a few years on campus like Joe Burrow did. And right now, Ryan Day is still chasing quarterbacks. He wants 4 on scholarship. He'll have that next year, but won't after that year. And unless he signs 2 again in 2021, which I don't know that he will. And so you're constantly chasing. And maybe if you just go sign, like I saw, I think the top Ohio quarterback this year signed with Youngstown State. So I don't know if that's a guy you go get or not, but not this year anyway, not with 2 quarterbacks already signed, but maybe having a few more Ohio guys around, they stick around longer. And Urban Meyer talked about he would keep one spot open for an Ohio guy that would develop as a late bloomer. Ryan Day didn't seem to really wait on those late bloomers. He went and accepted commitments from them before their senior seasons, and maybe it'll pay off. Maybe we'll find out in 2 years that these guys can't play, or certain guys can't play that he agreed to early or that he offered early. And I think Urban Meyer was more patient or maybe more demanding. Ryan Day seems to be more in on the Ohio talk. Urban Meyer would talk it. Ryan Day so far is walking it.
I'll just take the ball and throw out some random thoughts that I had looking at OSU's signee list. And I know we don't want to spend the entire hour talking recruiting because I know people are anxious to talk about the game. But Paris Johnson, the comment when I talked to our people, they said he is a can't-miss NFL first-round draft pick, provided he puts the time and the effort and the work in, the proper amount of time and effort to improve his craft. So that's kind of an exciting thing, a guy that could come in. They're losing, obviously, one of the tackles, Brandon Bowen. Munford is probably on the fence whether he's going to leave to go to the NFL, maybe come back for his senior year. But there would be a tackle opening, although I'm sure they've got other guys in the pipeline like Petit Frere and whoever that are on the team now. But I think about him, when I was asking our guys about the wide receivers, here's Julian Fleming, the number 2 overall prospect in the country. And then I hear things like Jackson Smith, the Jigba, may be the best wide receiver in the country. So you hear things like that, and it just blows your mind that, okay, you've got the number 2 overall prospect, but he may not be the best wide receiver because there's another guy who has such a high ceiling that he could be. And the other thing is they covered, there's 3 receiver spots split in flanker and this H that they use in the slot or whatever. Seems like they covered the board with that. They covered the board, all 5 positions on the offensive line. So I think you got to be very excited about this. And when I look at their list, a lot of people talked about Lejon Cavazos as a safety. They've got him listed as a corner. He played corner as a senior at IMG Academy. Ryan Watts, also from Texas, he's been listed as a corner all along. 6'3", he goes. Not a lot of 6'3" corners out there. That's intriguing to begin with. They have Court Williams, who a lot of people had rated as an outside linebacker. They've got him listed as a safety. So maybe losing Clark Phillips, may or may not be the end of the world. I don't know. Cameron Martinez is still out there. He was the Gatorade Player of the Year, I think 2 years in a row in Michigan. And I think what he had done was put up some huge numbers, it seems, as a running quarterback for his team at, I think it's Muskegon, Michigan, I think was his school. So I guess we'll see how he figures it out in the next 5 weeks, maybe based on who Ohio State hires as their new defensive backs coach. But the last thing I will throw in on recruiting on this little mini rant that I'm on is Bill Green, one of our experts at 24/7 Sports, said, just stop and think for a moment. Urban Meyer had one top 5 class after another, and people take that for granted. Last year's class was a little smaller in numbers, and you had the uncertainty over what Urban Meyer was going to do. And it was 14th, I think, in the final rankings. And, of course, Day was the coach from December 4th through the early signing period, through the late signing period. He was only the head coach for a week when they signed the balance of the class. So take that for whatever it's worth. This is his first full cycle doing this. And what you had was a rookie head coach. He blew out the defensive staff except for Larry Johnson, brought in 4 new guys. He brought in Mike Yursich from Oklahoma State, and Mike Yursich wasn't recruiting any of these guys, Jack Miller or C.J. Stroud. So to build relationships in 1 year like he did, that's amazing. You had Matt Barnes from Maryland. You had Hafley, who was an NFL coach. They weren't recruiting any of these guys. Not recruiting any of these guys. They built relationships. There was some overlap with Madison and Washington. Michigan is obviously going to be recruiting some of the same guys, but obviously their fingerprints are all over this as well. So rookie head coach, 5 new assistants, and a lot of guys who had 0 relationships with any of these guys on this list a year ago at this time, and this is what they came back with. I think you got to be excited about what the future brings as Ryan Day is a recruiter. Already the number 2 class in America for 2021, very early. Jack Sawyer, the receiver from Massillon, Jaden Ballard, some other key names in there as well. To me, running back, Mayan Williams, nice player, over 4,000 yards, whatever the number was at Wynn Woods, but he's not a home run hitter, more of a plotter, maybe more like a Raymond Harris type. And be interesting to see what they do. Getting a running back that fits more the J.K. Dobbins, Mike Weber mold going forward. So that's my last bow. These people are so anxious. Clemson, only talk Clemson, or what the people over here are saying. So I'm done with recruiting unless somebody has a specific question.
It's usually the other way around. They want to talk recruiting 365 days a year. And Raymond Harris.
I think they're recruiting
I
down
want to talk about Raymond Harris.
I want to talk about Raymond Harris, too. One of
Let's
my
talk
favorite
about the quiet storm.
Ohio State Buckeyes of all time with the
storm.
200. And what did he have against BYU in the 93 Holiday Bowl? Man, he just tore them to shreds. He had like 245 or 250 on the ground in that game.
He needed it because they barely won the game.
Yeah, they barely won that game. I thought they should have beat
First
up
bowl
BYU.
win.
Much better athlete. They should have won that game.
He guaranteed they were going to beat BYU. First bowl win in his 5th year.
Nobody ever looked better at 34 than Raymond Harris.
Absolutely.
44. I saw him at a basketball game last week. He looks great.
3 big bowl wins over BYU in the span of 11 years. All right. A little bit bigger game to be played here in about 10 days with Clemson. And before we get to that specific matchup, a move that certainly is going to impact the game to some degree would be Jeff Hafley moving to Boston College as head coach, although Buckeye fans have to be a little bit eased by a statement that he made about, hey, I got to head back to Columbus. I got a national championship to win. I heard him say at the Boston College introduction. So is there any indication to give any concern to this? And I will let you guys dive in, whomever wants to start first.
I'll just go back to 2014 when Ohio State had to replace Tom Herman. When all of that was going on, he's putting his staff together. They didn't have the early signing period at that point. So he was also recruiting. Well, let me finish, and I'll tell you. It's going to take a while. I'll get there.
I don't remember.
No, yes. But they were able to somehow manage to not only win a national title that year, but Tom Herman created this Cardale Jones guy out of clay and basically turned him into a starting quarterback because he was not a starting quarterback before the postseason. And he'll tell you that as well. Like he wasn't a serious football player until he absolutely had to be. And Urban Meyer and Tom Herman got him ready, and they did that. So it is possible to go ahead and do two things at once. And the thing that Jeff Hafley has that Tom Herman didn't is Jeff Hafley has all hands on deck, provided Sean Wade is going to be fine. And it sounds like he should be. Not that Ryan Day talks a lot about injuries or gives us much insight there at all. Whatever. No, I'm not saying nothing. I'm not trying to get in trouble. But Jeff Hafley, he's also like I don't think he's going to do anything to hurt his players, hurt his good friend Ryan Day, hurt his own legacy. Nothing would help Boston College recruiting more than Ohio State winning a national title. He can go out on a recruiting trail right now and talk to guys all over the Northeast. It's not going to help nearly as much as a big ring that he can have on his desk for everyone to see and say, this is what I'm going to bring and this is what I want to bring to Boston College. So, Clemson's going through it with Jeff Scott or, they've got their own issues, but this happens every year and somehow teams still manage to get through it. So I don't think it's going to be a huge deal. I do think you lose time when he's flying to Boston College and doing his press conference there. And that's time that he's missing, but you also have 3 weeks to prepare for the game. So you should be able to get everything you need done. And then if you end up losing, I wouldn't say it's because of a lack of time. It's going to be because of a lack of execution or turnovers or what have you.
Exactly. It's not like teams don't go through this anyway. Alabama, while they may not be in the playoff this year, are pretty much a permanent fixture, and they're turning over staff every year as programs go and pluck their coaches away. And they've had a tremendous series with Clemson here over the last couple of years that they won't be able to defend this year, not being in the playoff, playing that team up north instead in some nondescript bowl game. But it's a major loss. But he will be coaching. The day that he went to Boston College to go do his presser, he probably would have been on the road recruiting anyway. He probably wouldn't have been back for preps. That first week of practice is really just focusing on yourself and really run more by Mickey Marotti and, the couple of coaches that you leave back who aren't on the road at that point. So, Jeff Hafley is going to burn the midnight oil. He's going to have to do double duty in a lot of things. Try and work on a little bit of recruiting, but we remember Tom Herman, and his name isn't exactly the best name around Columbus among some fans, but he was able to do all of that. And then when Ohio State was won the title and hoisted the trophy, I saw him pull out a UH hat and took a lot of pictures with that Houston Cougars hat on, and that was used in recruiting materials. And Jeff Hafley hopes to follow that same path.
My turn. I joked with these guys earlier. I even taped a semi-rant and sent it to them. But I was just thinking about this. Clemson is so affronted by the fact that they won the championship last year, and they were number one in the preseason. They had that close matchup with North Carolina on September the 28th. And I will note for you that they then won the next 8 games by an average of 40 points against competition, let's just say that, some good, some bad, some really bad. And I think this whole thing is an insult to them. It's an affront to the sensibility. Don't people know that they won it last year and the trophy should just be shipped to Clemson, South Carolina because of that? It really is an affront to the sensibility that they're actually going to make this team that has been so good for so long. They haven't lost a game in 2 full years. 2 full years on the calendar. They seriously haven't lost a game, and they're going to be made to play in this playoff and have to win 2 games to win this championship. To me, I think that's a total insult to them. And for people not to recognize that they've won 28 straight games and to not give them the proper credit, to me, is just a total insult. And I could understand how they're offended. I can get it. I really do. Now, to counter that, Ohio State's won 19 in a row and has played much better competition, at least this season. They played 4 or 5 of the top 10 or 15 teams. And, again, what I come back to is Clemson, when their defensive line lines up, and they don't have Farrell and Lawrence and Wilkins like they did last year. Venables has had to scheme it up and run stunts and twists and blitzes, and you never know where it's coming from, but it's coming. Well, teams that weren't equipped to deal with that didn't deal with it very well. Ohio State has seen every look conceivable under the sun as Wisconsin, Penn State, Michigan State, all very good defensive teams, did everything they could in their power. I don't think Clemson played a defense on par with any of the ones I just mentioned. So, I get it. They're great. They're wonderful, and no one has tested them, but they haven't played anybody either. And I think when their offensive line lines up and Chase Young, who's the best player that they've played against all season, gets around their offensive tackle and puts some heat on the quarterback, they're going to realize they're in a real football game. This isn't Virginia. This isn't Boston College. This is a real, live, breathing top 5 team you're playing. And I think the sooner people kind of, reconcile that in their head, that Ohio State's got great offense, great defense, tested against very good competition, that this is going to be a football game. I mean, I'm reading USA Today's pick here, Clemson 28-24. That's great. Maybe that's what it turns out to be. I don't know. But, people who think that, one bad half of football for Ohio State is the reason. I sat down at my church last week. My wife is the choir director. I sit down, got my plate of food for the Christmas party. An 80-year-old man comes over and sits right next to me. What are the first things out of his mouth? How bad is Clemson going to beat Ohio State in the Fiesta Bowl? I said, I don't know. I think it'll be a very good game. I grabbed my food and I moved to the next table because I'm just not listening to that. And I'm not going to be party to that. I mean, maybe they get blown out. Nothing that we've seen to date indicates that should happen. Of course, Ohio State, was in the same situation, 3 years ago, and got blown out. So
that was a very one-dimensional team, and this isn't a one-dimensional team this year. So, if you sit there and you have one dimension and you take that dimension away, then you have no dimensions. And they had no dimensions working that night. And I'm not saying that that's my prediction for what's going to happen here. I don't know if we're going to make our predictions this week or if we're going to do it, next week, if we all huddle around one computer while we're out there in Scottsdale or whatnot. But I've heard all the reasons why, I shouldn't even bother traveling and whatnot. I mean, okay, Ohio State is 0-3 against Clemson. What do those previous games mean for this one? Nothing, not a darn thing. So, that's not taking anything away from the Jimmies and Joes that they have on Clemson. They've got some tremendous playmakers, but I think a lot of people are sleeping on Ohio State in this one. And, I've seen a couple of interesting comments come through the super chat, and I'm just going to respectfully disagree with some of the Clemson supporters with their comments, and I'll just leave it at that.
So I ran a ton of numbers, and Tony, I'll cut you loose here in just a second. I ran a ton of numbers on this matchup, and to Steve's point, Clemson faced 3 of the top 60 defenses in the country. Texas A&M number 31, Virginia number 41, in which they only scored 62 points on them, and North Carolina the 60th best defense, according to just the yardage total, which doesn't give us the clear picture, but it's a very strong indication. Only 3 of the top 60 defenses in the country. Ohio State played 7 games against the top 37. So, and then the 2016 matchup, I think we could all speak to that in regards to when we saw that Ohio State offense struggle to gain first downs in the Michigan game. And wasn't that also the Ohio State team that beat Northwestern like 24-20 at home? They had a number of efforts in which you could just tell it was not a stellar Ohio State offense. They scraped and clawed and did everything they possibly could to win that Michigan game. I came away from that game preparing to make a prediction or think about how I viewed the Clemson matchup and really thought, man, they are going to struggle. But over the course of time, I started to believe in Urban Meyer and the Ohio State brand, and I truly thought they were going to win that game, but I thought I kind of convinced myself that they were going to win that game. And then when it all played out, I thought, oh, yeah, that's right. It was that J.T. Barrett offense, and I love J.T. Barrett, but it's that J.T. Barrett-led offense with some issues, and they lost. Who'd they lose at left tackle that night? Isaiah Prince?
Jamarco Jones?
They lost their left tackle. Michael Jordan had to come in, right?
I blocked a lot of that game.
Buckeyes, the first series, they lost somebody at the left tackle position, and that really hurt them.
That would have been Jamarco at that point, I believe.
Okay,
Yeah.
and Jordan had to come in, I
Go
think.
into the college press box to see if I can find it.
Yeah,
And I think Jordan had to come in. This was the first series, and if you guys recall, of course, they missed 2 field goals that would have put them up 6-0. Denzel Ward or Lattimore, Marcus Lattimore, I think, had the interception on the first series. They should have kicked a field goal. They missed it. Then the next series, they could have kicked a field goal. They missed it. And that certainly didn't get them off to a good start.
We'll see.
Yeah.
Mark, Urban Meyer said this will never happen again at Ohio State. So I threw it all away. Like, no reason to remember it or, think about it anymore because it's never going to happen again. So why would anybody even talk about it?
That was a game that they lost 31-0 and it was still like 17-0 in the third quarter. Like they were still in the game if they could just get a first down, and give Clemson's defense so much credit for what they did against Ohio State. Those guys I referenced earlier, Wilkins, and those guys, they were all cutting their teeth at that time, but they were already pretty dominant. And, they did a number on Ohio State. Ohio State's defense gave up 31 points, but they were left for dead. Ohio State couldn't get a first down, couldn't sustain a drive, would go 3 and out, and the defense would have to go right back out there. And I think they wore down as much as anything by the end of the game. It was a great Ohio State defense. It was a pathetic Ohio State offense, one of the 2 years coordinated by Ed Warner and the Warner Beck years. You can get that DVD collection, I'm sure, at Rite Aid for $1.99. But it was pretty ugly.
I think actually that was the worst Ohio State team that Urban Meyer fielded, other than, the 2012 team's difficult to rate. They didn't play a postseason game, but 2013 really struggled on defense. But after that, I thought the 2015 team was obviously just, if they decided to play, forget it. I think that team would have won the national championship. The 2017 and 18 teams, I think they would have shown up in a playoff. Last year's team, they got it together on defense to a certain extent late in the season. I was really anxious to see them in a playoff to see what they would have done.
That the 2016 game, Ohio State was a 2.5 point favorite. So some people thinking they should have won, or that it wasn't going to be a blowout or anything. I mean, Vegas didn't think it was going to be a blowout, and that was one of the. Maybe it would have been better if Ohio State was the underdog, because Urban Meyer at that point had never lost as an underdog. I think maybe never did lose as an underdog at Ohio State. So we'll see how Ryan Day does. This being his first game as an underdog, this coming up against Clemson. I wonder with this supreme confidence that Clemson fans have, and Clemson players are talking very highly of themselves as well. It reminds me back the 2002 game against Miami, the Hurricanes in the championship game. Right away, the Ohio State defensive line announced their presence to the Miami offense and to quarterback Ken Dorsey, and they seemed to be a little skittish immediately after, because you had Kenny Peterson in the backfield. Everybody was getting into that backfield, and they didn't really understand what had hit them, and it took them a while to maybe realize it. And by then, there was nothing. They knew they were going to be in a long fight. And this year, I wonder, maybe Clemson, we know they haven't been tested. They were certainly last year, throughout the playoffs. Maybe there's a similar effect this time around with the Ohio State defensive line, and Clemson maybe not as up to speed as they think they should be or thought they would be. And we'll see. This game will be won in the trenches, as they say, and I like Ohio State's trenches.
As our friend Mark D'Antonio, who just signed the number 11 class out of 14 schools in the Big Ten, and hoping to compete with Michigan, Penn State, Ohio State, and now Indiana, and now Rutgers in Maryland. As he once said, the arrogance comes before the fall. So don't say we didn't tell you. Don't say we didn't warn you.
I'm just sitting here minding my tongue as I read some of these comments coming through. That's all I'm doing. When a Penn State fan is picking Ohio State, I thought conference pride only existed in the SEC, where the Vanderbilts and the Ole Misses and the Mississippi State sat there and cheered on Alabama because that's all that they had. But I don't really understand what's happening here, seeing the Big Ten come together like this when they're always at odds every other time of the year. But
B1G.
Exactly.
Dude, I was listening to 84 today, and I got one of those bumpers as they were going in and out of the Noonheisel show, and I don't even know who it was. He goes, "Yeah, we battle each other all fall, and then just something happens. We're all pulling for one another in them bowl games. SEC, it just means more." I'm like, oh my God, my head's going to explode. So, yeah.
So I take it you guys don't root for the Big Ten in bowl games.
I
don't care.
If I have money
for my confidence
I
point.
would, but I don't really care.
If they're on, I'll watch it.
I'll watch any bowl game. I'm going to watch bowl games on Friday. I'm going to watch the Kent State, whoever the hell they're playing game, and whatever the other one is too, just because they're bowl games. But I don't have a rooting interest on any of them. I care about where I'm going to spend the holidays. I mean, maybe I'm a little selfish that way. Just get me to New Orleans.
So when you look at, and I know that you guys will dig into Clemson material a lot more. You guys have been slammed with National Signing Day. So the insight that you have at this point and what you've been able to dig in on is a little bit preliminary. But as you look at the two teams, do you think there's a decided advantage anywhere?
I like Ohio State. I think Ohio State's going to be able to run on them. I really do. I have my stats right here. The rushing defenses that they've gone against, honestly, they've gone the best rushing defense they've gone against. Clemson has, or a rushing offense that they've gone against was Boston College, who was a very one-dimensional team. When we look statistically, the best rushing offense that they went against was Wofford. Granted, those are FCS stats, and they're playing the majority of their games there. Wofford running for almost 306 yards a game. They're coming off of playing Virginia, who averages 126.5 yards a game, good for 113 out of 130. I really think that J.K. Dobbins, with that offensive line in front of him, is going to be able to pick up huge tracts of land. I think that that's going to be a good opportunity for them to keep those gigantic, freakishly good receivers of T. Higgins and Justin Ross off the field and Trevor Lawrence. And I think Ohio State should have an advantage there. Conversely, when I look at Clemson, we're going to see how good BIA really is against those receivers. Ohio State's going to have to be able to get a pass rush. The Clemson offensive line only giving up 1 sack per game. Granted, they're probably not facing the type of defensive lines that the Big Ten offers in the ACC. And, I'm not using this as an opportunity to rail against the Charmin soft ACC, but, read into it how you will. But, those receivers are no joke. And I think that their running back is a solid running back, has the quietest 1,500 yards I've seen this year, really not on a lot of carries. But, outside of Jonathan Taylor at the Big Ten championship game, getting his second opportunity against Ohio State, nobody's run on the Buckeyes. And I'm not convinced that Clemson's going to be able to pick up a lot of yardage there. I still see Travis Etienne being in that 75 to 100 yard range, but I don't see him, breaking a lot of plays against this defense.
What we haven't seen Ohio State do is turn the ball over a whole lot. Fields just 1 interception. I think he lost a couple fumbles. And Dobbins has rarely fumbled as well. So to me, that's important that Ohio State doesn't beat itself if they want to win this game. I think the other thing, they got off to a terrible start against Wisconsin. And Wisconsin did some things defensively to really mess up what Ohio State was doing. Ohio State did turn the ball over with Fields in the red zone in that game, and it was 21-7. Had a mistake on defense, gave up a big run, and we're behind 21-7. If they have that same kind of a start against Clemson, it'll be 21-0 in the blink of an eye. I don't have any doubt about that. So they have to come out and be ready to go from the start. And the last 2 teams they played, Michigan and Wisconsin, both scored on the first possession of the game, I believe. And the defense is going to have to come out and not make the adjustments at halftime or make the adjustments at the first quarter break. They need to come out with the solid plan on what to do against Trevor Lawrence and Higgins and Travis Etienne and the rest right from the jump. I mean, you can't wait around and say, okay, well, we gave them 7, now we're going to make the changes. You need to hold them to 3 if at all possible. And I think Ohio State's got a decided edge in the special team. So if the game comes down to the last play or whatever, or a return or something like that, I think Ohio State's got the ability, and with the kick specialists in particular, to shave it in that direction. But again, to me, it's all about the start. It's all about taking care of the football. I think if you do those 2 things well, then you should be in this game in the fourth quarter, no question.
So to Jesse's point there, I did mention that Ohio State had faced the better defenses than Clemson. And to be fair, Clemson statistically, and then I'm going to explain at least my perspective, has faced better offenses than Ohio State in the Big Ten. I don't think that's necessarily the case. If you just look at total yardage, Wake had a number 12 ranking in the nation, North Carolina number 14, Louisville 36, and then it drops off a ton from there in terms of the offenses that Clemson faced. Ohio State
wasn't in the game when they played Wake. They didn't face Wake was not Wake.
They were missing their best wide receiver, their best player, Sage Surratt, no question. And then you'll also have to consider when you're matching up those statistics is that those high-scoring offenses were facing bad defenses. And you also have to consider, and so we can play that game back and forth in both conferences. What we can't play and is completely objective is that the SEC, I will let you guys fill in the blank if you can find this number. The ACC, I'm sorry, outside of Clemson, which beat Texas A&M and South Carolina 2-0 against the Power 5, the rest of the ACC was what? In 16 games against the other 4 conferences. Give me a guess at a record, the ACC against the other 4 conferences.
Garbage.
Not good.
And
not
Notre
good.
Dame included. So Power 5 teams. 16 games.
1-15.
2-14.
4-12.
Kevin, you win. 2-14 against the other 4 leagues. North Carolina beat South Carolina. Boston College beat Rutgers. Should we even count that one?
No.
Those are your 2 wins.
They lost to Kansas.
When you look at their non-con, I mean, I respect that A&M win. I don't respect South Carolina win at all. And then Wofford. I mean, and what was there? And at Syracuse, who got drilled by Maryland, and then Maryland fell off the table. So, people can sit there and rally against Ohio State's non-con. They did not play a Power 5 team this year, but FAU won their conference. Miami of Ohio won their conference championship game, and Cincinnati was a participant in their conference championship game before falling to Memphis. So, it is what it is. And Ricky, who's the best quarterback that you guys faced? Sam Howell at UNC?
Yeah, probably.
I would say maybe Kellen Mond. But outside, I would say Kellen Mond probably above Sam Howell. But
maybe
we're really mincing, at this point.
I think it is definitely a concern for Ohio State that the best quarterback they've faced is either Shea Patterson or Jack Cohn, because Trevor Lawrence is miles beyond those guys. And so that's why, Kevin, you said we'll see how good BIA is, and BIA is best in America. That's Ohio State's secondary. That's how they refer to themselves. And maybe you could have several different secondaries consider themselves BIA if all you're playing is Big Ten quarterbacks. So, yeah, it's going to be huge. And this will be the best quarterback Ohio State has faced. Travis Etienne will by far be the best running back. The receivers will be the best receivers they've faced. So we'll see how good this Ohio State team is. What's that?
You like Etienne better than Jonathan Taylor?
No, you're right there. But Etienne is a home run hitter, and like Taylor. Taylor's a workhorse. But the entire package, Etienne in that package, like imagine Taylor in an offense with a quarterback and receivers, and maybe he rushed for 3,000 yards. We'll see, or we won't see. But with Etienne and just the entire package, it's a different offense than Ohio State has faced in terms of talent. I think they still have the defensive line to They'll give up some points. I'm concerned about the tackling based on the Big Ten championship game against Wisconsin. That was very uncharacteristic. Jordan Fuller missed some tackles, and if he's the one guy that you really can't have missing tackles because he's the last line of defense, and he's going to need to bring down Travis Etienne. I do think Ohio State will be able to run the ball. They've run it on everybody, 200 yards on everybody, I believe, maybe except for the last game. But with Clemson changing their fronts and doing this and that and all of these different things, it may take Ohio State some time to figure each one of them out and then adapt to what do we do when it's this and what do we do when it's that, even though they already know that stuff is going to happen, so they should be ready for it. But again, this is if Justin Fields is healthy, as Ryan Day said he will be, this is a matchup between two teams who could be a rude awakening for either team in terms of the talent level that they're playing against. What I would say is something we've talked about in the past is Ohio State has been tested this season. Clemson has not. Perhaps that's in Ohio State. That's in Ohio State's favor because being down 14-0 and not blinking basically is a pretty good indicator that you can handle adversity. What would Clemson look like down 14-0? In the ACC, it would be a 72-14 win eventually anyway, so it's no big deal. But maybe it's different if it's Ohio State up 14-0 because they have the ability to continue to put points up and to stop an above average offense. We'll see how well they do against a great offense in Clemson.
It'll be interesting in this one. It'll be the first time in a while that Ohio State's not facing a real legitimate playmaker at tight end. And I'm not trying to take anything away from J.C. Chalk, but got about a dozen catches for 70 yards, no touchdowns, no Pat Freiermuth there, no Michigan tight ends there, no Jake Ferguson. So it'll be interesting to see. They're not. I mean, of course, they could sit. Jeff Scott could be drawing something up there, but I just don't think that Chalk's that type of player to be that guy. So it'll be a departure from what Ohio State traditionally sees in the Big Ten, where there are a lot of teams that go against them and really try to get a tight end up against Ohio State's linebackers.
And like Jim Tressel used to say, you want me to throw to the tight ends and not throw to Ted Ginn or Santonio Holmes or Roy Hall or Anthony Gonzalez. They've got enough receivers. They don't need tight ends.
Clemson, Ohio State, yes, they have played in the past. 2016, of course, we've talked about that one. The Orange Bowl game at the conclusion of 2013, and way back, Woody Hayes' final game at the Gator Bowl in 1978. Got Kevin Noon on the line from Rivals. We've got Steve Hellwagon from Bucknuts 247 Sports. Of course, Kevin again, Buckeye Grove, and Tony Gerdeman from the Ozone. So you got to join those guys for just tremendous coverage on Ohio State football. And you guys benefit, of course, if the viewers out there from their information and insight that they bring and deliver each and every week with us here at Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. Would like to mention, and let me find it. Being a horrible navigator of this whole deal right here because I got way too many banners to choose from. But we've got, forget it. we've got, we won't even go there because I've lost track of our little note on this sponsor. So we'll let them go, and I won't eat as much this week. All right, very good. Anything else on this ball game? I have went through the comments section and not a whole lot of, let's see, I'll be kind to the commenters. Not a whole lot of meat there, but a lot of big scores on both sides, especially on the Clemson side. Saw some 56 points, 60 points.
I'll just throw this in there in my bid to help college football fans. Playing the game on Saturday is okay, I suppose. And I know they're hamstrung by what the NFL leaves for them and when they can schedule their games and everything. But this still feels like an experiment. The 31st, Bill Hancock maintained that this will be our new tradition. We'll play it on the 31st, except in the years when the Rose Bowl has it, and then it'll be on the 1st like it should be. And that's my point. I think it should be on the 1st. I put this on Twitter earlier today. I think in the years that the Rose Bowl has it, They're at 5 o'clock and 8:30. It's all good. It's all gold. I think in the years when the Rose Bowl doesn't have it, it should be at 1 o'clock, one semifinal, Rose Bowl at 5, other semifinal at 8:30. This is ridiculous that they're playing this on the 28th or whatever it is, and then you're going to sit around until the 13th. These games, the two semifinal games, should be played on January 1st every year. TV people are going to say, well, you're going to get a better rating at 4 o'clock on a Saturday than you would at 1 o'clock on January the 1st. And what I say to that is not all that much different, particularly if you put a good matchup at 1 o'clock. So, blow out the Citrus Bowl, blow out the Capital One or the Outback, and those games can be played another day. 3 games, boom, 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 is all you need on that day. 1 o'clock, 5 o'clock, and 8:30, and that's how the semifinals and the Rose Bowl should go. That's my opinion.
I don't have it. I'll just play the games. I think the 28th is horrible. I don't think that we should be playing them that early. They've done them on the 29th. I mean, before we know it, they're going to be doing them on the 26th. I mean, who knows? I think that they need to get that figured out. I do remember the one year that we did go out to the Fiesta Bowl when it was not a CFP game, and because they certainly weren't going to do a daytime game for the Sugar Bowl, and the Rose Bowl wasn't going to move its slot, we were on the first bus heading out to, at that point, University of Phoenix Stadium, and it was still dark out because they drew the matinee spot. And I think the game went off at 10 a.m. local time or something ridiculous there. They certainly do need to kind of figure out some of these times. I understand trying to highlight these games separate from everything else to try and draw the biggest rating, but quality games will take care of themselves. I mean, you know what? If you're up against the Pool and Weed Eater Bowl, who really cares? I mean, fans and alumni of that school will watch, and nobody else will.
Well, nobody's going to schedule against the playoff games anyway, so those bowls would clear out. So what is the issue? That they're playing on a Saturday night because it's Saturday night, correct? And the NFL's on Sunday.
Yeah, but the issue is that they're on this truncated schedule where all these teams just played on December the 7th. And I know it's only a 3-day difference or a 4-day difference to get it over to the 1st. But to me, I think that's what college football is January 1st. And that's where these semifinal games should be played. I mean, they're played on the 1st the year that the Rose Bowl has it. Why can't they be played on the 1st every year? That's my fervent belief. They screwed around. Your ratings are going to be what your ratings are going to be. And I mean, either you've got a USC Texas that everybody had to tune in and see that one year in the championship game, or you're going to have Washington playing somebody and no one's going to give a crap, even though it's a semifinal game. So
the 3 playoff games, meaning the championship game, then the 2 semifinals, are going to be the 3 highest rated games of the year, and certainly the bowl season. And then the 4th highest rated game is going to be the Rose Bowl. That's almost lock, stock, barrel, regardless of where you put the games. But
yeah, I'd be curious.
They want to maximize the games and put them in prime time.
Yeah. Whatever works. I'm just thinking for a lot of the standpoint, the 28th, I guess it is a Saturday, which makes it a nicer day to do it because it's not a work day. But, they were doing it on the 31st, which, believe it or not, half of America still works on the 31st if it's a weekday. And I know that experiment didn't work, but I don't know. It just seems like they're still trying to feel their way through the dark with what should be a great television property, and they can never get it right. In my opinion, we'll see if Saturday works out for them. I think they're going to get hit with a lot of people watching this game in bars and restaurants and may not get the home viewership that they want, for ratings purposes.
They'll get it figured out, and then 2 months later, they'll announce they're going to 8 teams, and that schedule will get scrapped completely anyway.
As is typically the case, we've got the most people on the line when we're wrapping up the show at 211. We thank you so much for joining us. So what you need to do is you need to wait for the video to post, and you can catch everything that you missed. And hopefully we can find some time. It's a holiday week, but hopefully we can find some time next week to really knock out a big preview on Ohio State and Clemson. Join Steve Hillwagon upper right there from Bucknuts, Kevin Noon from Buckeye Grove, and of course Tony Gerdeman from theozone.net. Guys, I appreciate you taking an hour out of your week each and every week to help me out here on Ohio State Buckeyes Live.
Absolutely.
Great to be here.
Happy holidays, everyone. See you guys later.